Coming up, a look back at one of my favorite games from the 90s. We're getting our game on old school like never before. It's a special Game Day on B Squared, and it all starts right now. Well, they don't make them like they used to, or at least that's what they say about video games. Not that long ago, I brought you a look at one of my other favorite games from the 90s, 1995's Star Trek The Next Generation, A Final Unity, made by Spectrum Holobyte and released in 1995 for the DOS operating system, if you can believe that. It's a really cool game. People have said that it's exactly like you're watching an episode of the series, or maybe multiple episodes of the series, since the game is long, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. In that game, we talked about how the graphics were a little primitive, the sound design was a little wonky, but they recorded hours upon hours of new dialogue with the actual actors from the series. Just think about how many conversation trees they had to populate, but I'm getting sidetracked. Another one of my favorite games from the same era was 1996's Terminator SkyNET. It's a game based on the SkyNET, or the Terminator franchise rather, and this particular game I first saw in 1996 on a trip to Egghead Software, and I've always thought, sidebar, that Egghead Software became Newegg, but I don't know, maybe it's just a coincidence of naming. But at any rate, this game, let's just say this game had a very shiny box, and if you've ever seen it, believe me, it was flashy, it was attention-getting, and it was just the thing to get the attention of an 11-year-old like me with an attention span about this long. So, yeah. But the idea was, it's after Judgment Day, and you take on the role of a resistance fighter that has to go through and stop SkyNet's latest plan to annihilate the Earth, or something like that. And just to look at the information that Wikipedia has on it, I just learned something I didn't know, which was this was originally intended to be an expansion pack for Terminator Future Shock, a game that I have never played, full disclosure, but then got adapted into a standalone product, and that sounds a lot like what they did with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. It originally started as a bunch of ideas for new DLC, and instead they just spun it off into its own game, which I thought was pretty cool. But at any rate, so this old game was released by Bethesda Softworks, and what's interesting is that Wikipedia notes it received many positive reviews praising its advanced, high-resolution graphics for the time. Remember that phrase, because when we load the game here in a minute, I want you to take a look at the quality of the graphics that we can see, and then compare those to the graphics that we get today. Now, before we move on, I want to give a shout out to Taco Adventure Gaming, not to be confused with Taco and Yoshi Gaming. Not that long ago, I was looking on YouTube for any game footage of the Chaos Continuum, another game from the 90s, this one 1994, because, you know, I hadn't played that one, I don't think, since 97 or 98, and I was just curious what was out there. I'd seen, you know, a few playthroughs before, but this one video from Taco Adventure Gaming popped up, and I watched it all the way through, and it rekindled my interest in retro gaming. But I started looking around Taco's channel, and it turns out that this is a channel dedicated to replaying obscure retro games, and I am totally there for it. So if this is the kind of thing that interests you, go and give Taco a like and a subscribe, and tell him B Squared sent you. And it's, I looked through his channel, like I said, and there's some pretty interesting stuff there. So with that said, let's dive in and let's take a look at Terminator SkyNET, the game from 1996.
Hold your marks, we got 3 on the way. Repeat, 3 on the way. Fall back. Roger, mark, leader. Got the chatter at 5.
All right, so just look at this. This game, I think, was originally designed to run at 640 by 480, I think. Let's see. Detail. Oh, I beg your pardon. It was originally designed to run at 320 by 200 with a high-res mode available at 640 by 480. So, wow, what a time that was. So, you see that I've got my joystick here in front of me. I want to say that it is configured for use. Let me just make sure it's sufficiently and properly calibrated. It is. When I played this game initially, I was using a Logitech Wingman, that purple and yellow joystick from, what, 1995, I think is when it came out. It was a terrible joystick. Let me just put that out there. But it was it was good enough for its time. And the one that I have now is a Logitech Extreme 3D Pro, which through the magic of technology, we've been able to get to work with DOSBox. So with that said, let's see how well it works with this particular game as we start a new one-player game. So I'm going to enter my name, and when I was a kid, I was 11 years old. I had no idea what a call sign was, so I just threw in Camelot, and I'm doing that now as kind of a throwback. So this game is one of the few games that I remember from that time that had full motion video. And when I look at this today, I'm getting ready to show you the briefing, and we'll go through the GUI before we actually start the game. But when I look at this, I know how they did it. It's still an impressive piece of work. So let's watch the briefing first, and then we'll look at the other 2 pages of this GUI before we get into the actual game. So with that said, let's get our briefing.
Hey, Major. We heard you had some trouble.
Well, you know the score, Reese. We've got nothing but sunshine and palm trees here in L.A. Who could have any trouble?
It was bad, Cat?
It was a bloodbath. The bots ate us alive.
Kachowski and Weaver?
They didn't make it.
All right, people. We've got a lot of work to do to keep the robots out of Sector 3. Jensen just left to take out the bridge heading east from Sector 7. That should slow them down. Parker, what's the status on today's recon?
Got it right here, Connor. I've targeted 3 sites for more recon.
Fine. Let's get the scouts out ASAP.
Sir, has this individual been cleared by security?
Yeah, the bots are starting to look more and more like us every day. Hey, couldn't he be one of the prototypes for a new model or something?
Relax, Kyle. Our new soldier here checks out. I even had him run past one of the new K9 units. I've decided to assign him as a field op to the command team.
Major Catherine Parker. Good to have you aboard.
This is Dr. Hanover, our chief technician.
You could call me Bill.
And our young skeptic here is Kyle Reese, we think.
Yeah, well, you can't be too careful around here. Anyways, welcome aboard.
Now that we're all introduced, are you ready for some action?
Yes, sir.
Good. Parker, give him the details on one of those recon missions.
Right. The bots have a new complex in Sector 4. Surveillance has shown convoys moving in and out of there over the last 2 days. We need more information. The bots have something important going on there. We need to know about it.
Sounds straightforward enough.
It should be. You'll take a jeep through the hills and park a short distance from the complex, which will be west of your position. You shouldn't hit heavy opposition until you're inside. Once in, conduct a standard search of the facility, then return to base.
And that's the opening cutscene. And I know I've said it before, but, you know, for a game made in the 90s, I mean, this was pretty cool stuff. And it's not often in those days that you would see, like, full motion video like this. So they give you a visual brief, but they also have it written down here, which is good, because not everybody is visual. But they also give you a basic description of the enemies that you could potentially face in the upcoming mission. So this is our Hunter-Killer, the HK. Basic description of its capabilities. Same for the HK Light. The Terminator combat chassis. The Raptor, I don't remember seeing this one in any of the movies, but maybe I missed it. But remote mines like this, I don't remember seeing either. Turrets, trucks. So yeah, and then your statistics. This is like your hit or miss. Basically, if you played GoldenEye 007 and it would tell you how many shots you hit versus how many you missed, this is basically SkyNET's version of that. So there's not really that much more to see, but I remember looking at the write-ups in the tactical section, and they didn't tell you everything, but they would give you just enough that if you ran up against one of the enemies it described, that you would have an idea what you were supposed to do to defeat it. So, like this one, the HK is proven to be a dangerous enemy. It is light, fast, and maneuverable, and equipped with enough firepower to easily take out a resistance vehicle. The only good advantage we have is, in order to improve flight dynamics, it has thin armor, making this HK fairly easy to shoot down. Be careful when it flies overhead. Many resistance soldiers have been caught off guard by the HK's tail gun. So that tells you what the risk is, and it doesn't tell you straight away, here's the weak point, but it does tell you that it's not the most robust enemy you'll come up against. So again, I like that. It makes you put the pieces together. So with that said, let's start the game. Now, full disclosure, I am going to use some cheat codes because this whole setup is kind of weird. One, I'm out of practice with this game, but two, the setup here is not quite what SkyNET was designed to work with. So I'm just going to make it easy on myself. So there's one for immortality. There's one for all weapons. There's one for instant recovery of health. So, okay, joystick isn't that bad. So I'm going to be using a combination of the keyboard controls and the joystick. And again, I don't know how good this joystick is actually going to work. That's the wrong way. And I can see already the... Let me see if I can increase the speed of the joystick here. Oh, well, that's worse. See what medium does. Fairly slow. Okay, so there's just no overcoming the fact that it is a tad slow. All right, here, time for another that enables teleview. Now, normally, the weapon that I'm using would not be available this early in the game, but like I said, cheat codes are wonderful. I'm going to switch over to the mouse here for a second. The mouse is how I played this game for most of the time that I would try to play it, but after a couple of months I was able to get a joystick. So in a previous game review, I talked about sprites, these things that look like they never change no matter what angle you're coming at them from. So if you look at like the brush here or some of the debris scattered around, you see how there is no parallax there, no perspective shift? That's sprites. That is what these are. And that is the weakness of having sprites. Refill my ammo. So, Oh, and for anyone that's ever gone to tvtropes.org and seen developer foresight or the developers think of everything, watch this. I'm firing at the moon and it's saying, ow. How cool is that? I mean, it's hilarious to me, but... So here's our complex.
Found the complex HQ, searching for a way inside.
And what I like about this is, I'm just going to jump here, but it's impossible to get through that door before it closes. But it lets you know that that's the complex that they were talking about in the briefing. So I'm just going to look around. There's our HK. So, but they built out this ruined area fairly well, I think. So here's our street. There are enemies scattered about. There's equipment scattered about. And I like how first, I like the sound design, period, but I also like how this game used sound cues to let you know when certain things were happening. So you've all heard the sound of the robots, like the servos whirring and whatnot. It lets you know when you're being approached by a robot. And you may not be able to tell through your speakers, but here, I can actually hear which side the approaching enemy is on. But the other thing is, when one of those mines locks on, you hear the sounds of those turrets firing. That means there's turrets nearby. But I just heard a minute ago that there was the sound of a mine locking on, and I have yet to actually come across said mine, so I don't know where it is. I will show you what's to the right here in a second, but a common theme to this game is buildings that are like halfway destroyed and have the floors caved in. And when you see that, it usually means that there's equipment there. So this is what we were hearing a minute ago. There are turrets over here. And if you have the rocket launcher, it will actually lock on when you're close to an enemy that it can destroy. But you can also shoot it just about anything. So, another nice touch is craters like this one. They look harmless enough, but if you go through them, like you see that, you hear that clicking sound? That's a Geiger counter, or it's meant to represent a Geiger counter. So, those craters are actually radioactive, or they are radioactive. And considering what we know about the Terminator franchise and the story of Judgment Day, it makes sense that there would be radiation. And, I mean, just looking at some of these... Just looking at some of these models, I mean, it's primitive like you wouldn't believe, but I mean, look at this. They went to a lot of trouble to put stuff in, and this being 1996, I mean, that's a nice touch, and that probably took a good bit of effort to do. So you gotta appreciate the attention to detail. So, again, in the spirit of they told us what to do without telling us, we saw a vehicle just like this one going through the gate there. So what we have to do is, we already know from the truck that we found earlier by the radar station, we already know that we can get inside the cargo pod. So put two and two together. What you must do is sneak in, collect the gear that's here, and then by the time you get out, you are inside the complex. And you hear that ominous whirring sound, which says the Terminators are near. thought I saw something up there. Okay, so there is an HK. And you see how the missile followed the HK as it maneuvered? And these things can be everywhere. I mean, there. It's not perfect. It's not quite like the auto-aim that we know from GoldenEye 007, but it ain't bad. It really ain't bad. So, there's a lot of stuff scattered around, and during this first mission, you're really just supposed to explore, look around, see what's where, collect gear, and oh, what's this? Okay, so we found the controls for the gate and destroyed a chicken walker, I think is what they were informally called, that was waiting outside. And I don't know how well you can hear it, but there is a MIDI music track playing in the background. And I remember that one of the biggest challenges when I was a kid, not getting the sound card to work, but getting the MIDI track to work. So, before we go in, even though we're immortal, give ourselves a checkup, a combat checkup. The nice thing about this is they rendered and built a lot more of the game map than you actually play on. So here, remember we saw that HK lift off a little bit ago? This is the launch pad that it came from. So we've just turned off the landing lights. Go us. Yo, forgot about that. And there are bits of equipment and weapons scattered around, so in its own way, this game does encourage you to look around and explore. I cannot remember what's here, so let's see if the store will open. It will not. I hear the sound of a machine. Okay, so I was being pursued by a chicken walker. Yow! Alright then. And you see how quickly my health and armor are depleting here. And a novice player? A novice player, if you weren't ready for what this game would do, you could get taken out fairly quickly. And I was taken out very quickly, more than once. Oh, and so I've heard that a good rule of thumb for those playing games from the Mario franchise is if it's moving, it can kill you, and that is very true in this game. So you'll find these things here, which I guess are meant to be loading arms that will attack you if you get too close. So, oh me. Like I said, you don't find games like this anymore. And there's another one. But these games all have a certain charm to them that rivals anything that we would do today, or anything that we would play today. Like I said, I'm playing with cheats enabled just because it's been so long, and I want to focus on playing the game instead of some of the tougher stuff like finding equipment and health and having to restart. But back in the day, this was a very challenging game. Even if you were on the easiest difficulty level. And this is the introductory mission, so this is actually this is actually as easy as it gets. This game never gets easier, it gets harder. And I just heard the sound of a couple of mines locking on, so I'm alternating between mouse controls and using the joystick. The joystick is good for like precision moves, and the mouse is good for like when you need to do things quickly. Are there any controls down here that I can interact with? I don't think so. No, there are not. So the only thing that bothered me is that when you're up on a ramp like this, it was very easy to fall to the floor below. Sometimes you could save it, and sometimes you couldn't. And you may recognize certain elements of this from the Doom games, and I swear, when I first started playing this game, I swear I almost thought that this was a sequel to Doom. I was wrong, but, you know, when you're a kid, what do you know? Whoa! And just from a narrative standpoint, it always fascinated me how much, like, of the interior spaces the machines have left intact. I mean, this, to all intents and purposes, this looks like a fully functional... This looks like a fully functional facility. A facility to do what? I don't know, but that's what it looks like. I'm curious. I know where I need to go. I do remember where I need to go next, but... I do remember where I need to go next, but I want to explore the different levels.
I think I found something.
So, there is that. And there is a locked door, so I apologize to anyone who suffers from motion sickness. I know when I use the mouse controls, I know it can be a tad dizzying, and I am legitimately sorry about that. Whew. Okay, so the door is open. One reason why I'm trying to use the joystick controls when I can, because I know that's easier for a lot of you to look at. So I believe we go down. I want to say we go this way, maybe? Okay. Oh, what could this be? What could this be?
Oh my god, it's a nuke. I'm getting the hell out of here.
Hades Mark 7396. That, to quote Agent K from Men in Black 2, that
Oh my god,
is a hell of a
it's
fish.
nuke. I'm getting the hell out of here.
That is a hell of a fish. Alright, so the trick here... So what you have to do is you have to jump on the nose cone of the missile and ride it up out of the complex to start the next phase of the game. And remembering that this is one of those areas where I could get soft locked.
Oh my god, it's a nuke. I'm getting the hell out of here.
Managed to do it. Now, so I just heard the sound of a mine locking on, so but I don't see it, so... Alright. Bots are all over me. I'm heading back to the Jeep. So there, the resistance fighter talking to himself gives you the idea of what you're supposed to do next. Hard part, there we go. Hard part can be when one of those HKs is directly overhead, the hard part can be getting yourself into position to actually take it out. There we are. The area is clear. All right. So we go back. We already know that there is a switch here that will open the gate. So I want to say that before this game, the last movie that came out was Terminator 2: Judgment Day. I could be mistaken. Strike that. I'm probably mistaken. Another HK. So that's not the way to go. Oh, mine, as opposed to yours. Dunkin' Donuts. You know, in all the years I've been playing this game, I never realized that that was the name of that shop. Dunkin' Donuts. Nice bland name product there. Again, look it up on TV Tropes. Bland name product. Okay, so I've cleared the area of enemy personnel. Let's see what awaits us back through the hills. Quite a bit more resistance to the resistance getting back this time. I love that you can target these, that you can lock onto enemies, and these missiles will actually track them down. So before, there was a walker there, and now there is a Terminator. And full disclosure, at the time that I was playing this game, I didn't know a thing about the Terminator franchise. Just do this again. Here.
Let's roll.
And that's the mission. Easy peasy. And now we go straight into mission 2. Or we would, but I just wanted to give you a quick taste of what Terminator SkyNET was all about. We'll do more playthrough with this later on, probably on a live, but in the meantime, like I said, this is one of my favorite games from the 90s, and I just had to share a little bit of it with you. And it looks primitive. Actually, it looks terrible by today's standards, but back then, this was the game to beat, or at least that's what I thought. And it may not hold up by modern standards, but it's still at least an enjoyable experience. And if you remember the game review, or the episode that I did comparing Ocarina of Time with Breath of the Wild, a game with all the modern technical touches can still be a bad game, because if it puts too much on the slick visuals and the polyphonic soundtrack and so on and so forth, but misses the good touches like a good story, then in my book, it doesn't hold up as a good game. In this game, there is a concrete story happening. And it helps if you're familiar with the Terminator franchise, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to be familiar with it. The game gives you all the information that you need. And that's one of the big things with licensed games. Sometimes there'll be a continuity lockout, again, see TV tropes, for people who aren't familiar with the overall franchise. So to my 11-year-old self that had never seen one frame of the Terminator franchise other than this, that was a nice touch. So, like I said, more to come, but for right now, that's all I've got for you. As always, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, this is Brandon Bridges reminding you the best way to be is B squared. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. We'll call what happened an on-air technical difficulty.